esteemed audience, and welcome to this week's edition of Stones and Power. I'm Ashley Mateo, and today I'm happy to be joined by my fellow Bruin, Alex Martinez.
Hi, everyone.
In today's episode, we'll explore two iconic Roman structures, the Colosseum and the Pantheon. These architectural marvels reveal much about Roman society, offering insights into their values, power, and contradictions. From the brutal spectacles of the Colosseum to the serene grandeur of the Pantheon, we'll examine how these buildings embody the might and beliefs of ancient Rome. Stay tuned for an in-depth look at these timeless symbols of Roman culture.
Absolutely, Ashley. The Colosseum symbolizes Rome's fascination with violence and spectacle. Gladiatorial combat, animal hunts, and executions were not only an entertainment but a way for the elite to showcase power and control. It turned suffering into a spectacle, reminding the people of Rome's military might and its ability to manipulate life for mass entertainment. In stark contrast, the Pantheon reflects a different aspect of Roman culture, their reverence for the divine. This awe-inspiring temple, with its harmonious design and celestial focus, was dedicated to all gods, emphasizing the Rome's deep spiritual connection to their belief and the cosmos. The Pantheon's architectural genius, particularly its dome and oculus, symbolizes the intersection of the earthly and the divine, demonstrating Rome's understanding of both the material and spiritual worlds.
What's even more fascinating is how the Colosseum and the Pantheon, through their unique features, embody Roman dominance. Before we get ahead of ourselves, though, let's dive right into the Colosseum, Alex.
Let's do it! Today, our focus will be on architectural aspects of the amphitheater. Therefore, it is essential to begin with the location and some basic history of the structure, beginning with Nero. Nero was emperor of Rome from 54 to 68 CE, and with him came a lot of controversy.
Controversy like what?
Well, besides the Great Fire of Rome that happened in 64 CE, which Nero was not present to witness as he was performing in a concert in southern Italy, he had the Domus Transitoria and the Domus Aura, built with state funds in 64 to 68 CE.
Man, that really shows his disregard for the public. It's almost like he felt he could do whatever he wanted without any consequences.
Exactly. It wasn't just about luxury, it was about asserting his dominance, making sure the empire revolved around his land and his desires.
It's hard to believe someone in such a position of power could be so selfish.
Wait for the important part, besides his needs, okay? He had a man-made lake built in the middle of Rome where the Colosseum now stands. But don't fret, the Flavian family came to power after Nero and reclaimed this land. In 70 CE, they began the Flavian amphitheater by draining the man-made lake and finished construction in 80 CE. Ironically, the Colosseum gained its name from a statue of Nero that was changed to a portrait of the sun god. Overall, this was a gift to the Roman people.
I'm so sorry to laugh, but I think Nero's damnation memorial is kind of deserved. He sounded like an awful leader. Removing his artificial lake is such a symbolical act. It's not just about reclaiming land. It represents a new beginning. Looking at the Colosseum, I can say that even as the Flavian family took a step forward, they also looked back and carried on the legacy of Roman power through architecture. Like, seriously, can we take a moment to discuss the sheer size of this structure? It's mind-blowing.
I definitely agree with you. For starters, according to its official website, it stands roughly around 157 feet tall. But to be honest, the height didn't become so clear to me until I went to the Hammy Museum and saw the Anfiteatro Flavio Detto, Il Coliseo in Rome by Giovanni Battista Piranesi. Seeing the structure in that print brought out the grandeur of the Colosseum and gave me a sense of just how imposing it must have been to those who first encountered it.
I agree. I saw the same piece there, and I understood that it's one of those things that you can't fully appreciate until you see it up close or through artwork that captures its majesty. Like, imagine, it could hold up to 50,000 spectators. To put it into perspective, the National Geographic said the Colosseum could fit a football field inside. This alone demonstrates the Romans' mastery of spatial design.
You know what? What surprises me is the engineering itself. The Colosseum's construction took 10 years, which is impressive for a monument of such a scale built by manual labor. This was probably because, as Elia mentions in The Colosseum, Quality and Efficiency of Construction, the amphitheater was constructed in sections by different contractors. She emphasizes that the use of travertine blocks in the building process reduced the need for mortar. Since travertine is a durable and easy to cut material, it allows for faster assembly. This division of labor and selected materials is very telling of their mastery.
I agree. Their ideas were very revolutionary for their architectural world. For instance, their awning system, the velarium, was a game changer. As mentioned in National Geographic, the velarium covered the upper part of the Colosseum and was operated by sailors and slaves to give shade to those audiences. These individuals used ropes and pulleys to extend and retract the sailcloth, adjusting it based on the weather.
Yes, this does sound impressive and reminds me of the overall purpose of the Colosseum. It's a place of entertainment.
Right. However, it's important to know that it's not what we might perceive as entertainment now, though. Like, the schedule of the Colosseum reflected the Romans' fascination with violence and spectacle. For instance, during the inaugural games, marking the first 100 events, Emperor Titus orchestrated brutal spectacles. The day was divided by mourning for Venetians, where animals fought or were slain by hunters. This was followed by a midday break, where public executions in the afternoon, and the final act often featured gladiatorial combat or mock naval battles, flooding the arena to reenact these famous conflicts. This ruthless program highlights the Romans' brutal approach to entertainment and their desire to demonstrate control over life and death.
Yeah, and when you think about it, the entertainment at the Colosseum wasn't just scheduled, it was organized around violence. I'm pretty sure we discussed that before, haven't we?
Yeah, we have actually. More recently, historians have studied the suffering of entertainers and their display for the Roman crowd, with animals being a prime example. Under Animal Events by Donald G. Kyle, published in the Oxford Handbook of Sport and Spectacle in the Ancient World, he mentions how animals' fights were more common because of one main reason: human fascination.
Wow. Moreover, Donald argues that humans intrinsically find wild animals as thrilling creatures, perhaps due to deep prehistoric memories of being hunted by such beasts. What's particularly interesting, though, is how the violence of killing wild animals in the flaming arena became not only an act of entertainment, but also a form of comfort for the Roman audience. It gave them a sense of control over nature and reaffirmed their power over the untamed world.
Suetonius, a Roman historian and bibliographer, claims that 5,000 beasts were killed in just one day during the inaugural games. To me, this number is a great way to understand the extent to which visitors enjoyed the spectacle of violence.
It was also probably entertaining because of all the diverse animals that participated in the spectacle, like mighty elephants, lions, tigers, leopards, and rhinoceroses, to name a few.
However, violence didn't end on a day with the deaths of 5,000 beasts. There were still gladiators fights to watch.
Ah, yes, the popular gladiator fights. How can anyone forget? These battles represented a different type of dominance and violence that Romans enjoyed, focusing on man versus man, unlike the beast hunts, which were more about man versus nature. In Gladiators by Michael Carter, published also in the Oxford Handbook, he discusses how gladiators came from all ranks. Some were volunteers, prisoners of war, and paid individuals, but most of them were slaves.
What's even more intriguing is that Carter highlights how gladiators fought not only to display cruelty and suffering, but also to demonstrate skill training and artistry. This was especially significant for slaves, as their only chance for freedom was through performing exceptionally well. In other words, their survival depended on how effectively they could sell the violence, brutality, and even their masculinity in the arena.
On that note, gladiators did not always fight to the death. Instead, they could request mercy by raising a finger, leaving their fate to the crowd's reaction. This brutal form of entertainment was just one aspect of Roman culture reflected in its grand structures. What a gruesome way to entertain! Now, the Colosseum is not the only example of a structure that depicts both Roman architecture brilliance and culture. As Mark and Hutchison mentioned in their article on the structure of the Roman Pantheon, Hadrian's Pantheon is considered the high point in the architectural revolution.
Oh, that's really impressive. And according to Britannica, the Pantheon's construction began in 27 BC by Marcus Vespasius Agrippa and was completed and rebuilt by Hadrian sometime between 118 and 128 CE. In Clas 51B, we discussed how the Pantheon shared several features with other Roman temples, such as the use of concrete, brick, and marble in its construction. It also included long porticos that enclosed sacred spaces, along with Corinthian capitals adorning the columns.
This might have been because, as we know, Roman structures were typically characterized by consistency. However, the Pantheon broke new ground by featuring a dome that forms a perfect sphere. With the dome and drum both matching in height at 71.5 feet each, That balance between the height of the dome and the dome itself is just mind-blowing, isn't it?
It definitely is, and it's one of those details that really sets the Pantheon apart from other Roman buildings. However, I think it's the five rings on the dome's roof that stands out. David Moore mentions in his text, The Pantheon, that these rings could have been inspired by the Greek construction of Mycenaean tombs. This connection to earlier cultures adds so much depth to the Pantheon design. It's significant because it's a powerful statement showing not only their military capabilities, but also their architectural talents.
Exactly. I was drawn in by their ability to stack materials by weights to construct the roof, along with their ability to counteract lateral thrust by building thick walls. This wasn't just clever engineering, it was a way to ensure the building could withstand the forces exerted on it without becoming overly heavy.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons the Pantheon has remained standing for so long. It was not only designed for grandeur, but also longevity. The way they carefully calculated and adjusted the weight and material composition shows their meticulous approach to structure. The Pantheon isn't just a building, it's a symbol of Roman innovation, mastery of engineering, and understanding of both aesthetics and functionality. Like, for instance, what I find most fascinating is the waffle like coffers that lead up to the 27-foot oculus. I mean, this is the only source of natural light in the dome.
You know what? This reminds me of that the oculus has become crucial to understanding of the dome's purpose. Although, as we discussed in Classes 51B, the exact function of the dome remains uncertain. We do know that the Pantheon is a temple dedicated to all gods, though. The oculus itself seems to serve a symbolic role, letting in light and providing what various authors consider to be a direct connection to the heavens. It's a perfect representation of how the Romans intertwined their architectural designs with spiritual meaning.
Absolutely. And that uncertainty has led to many speculations about the oculus and its significance. The authors Sparavinga and Dastru also suggest that the oculus may have played a central role in certain rituals. They propose that it could have been used during religious ceremonies when the sunlight streaming through the opening would create a dramatic effect, perhaps signaling the presence of the divine or representing a connection between the earthly realm and the gods above.
That's such an interesting idea. The way they tie the physical structure to spiritual symbolism shows how the Romans approached architecture with a deep understanding of both functionality and belief. The oculus wasn't just an opening in a dome. It was a conduit for divine light, making it a focal point for both the structure's design and the temple's religious significance.
Exactly. Even the way the sun's position changed throughout the day could have added a deeper sense at this time. This gives you the notion that the Pantheon wasn't just a building. It was a living, breathing space that reflected the Romans' connection to their gods, the cosmos, and the very sense of the universe.
And that attention to detail is remarkable, from the marbled walls to the geometric patterns and intricate decorations. All of this underscores the Romans' deep devotion to their gods. It's no surprise that the Pantheon's spiritual significance has endured over time. As Rano Gajek points out, in the 7th century, Pope Boniface IV requested that the Pantheon be converted into a station church, highlighting how the Pantheon's spiritual magnificence has transcended centuries, continued to be relevant and revered today.
That's an interesting perspective. The fact that such a magnificent structure continues to serve religious purposes centuries later speaks to its lasting influence and the powerful role it played in exerting religion in the Roman culture, of course.
Now, looking at both of these structures side by side, we can note a couple of things. For one, they're both very indicative of culture.
I completely agree. The grandeur of the Colosseum and the Greek-inspired rings and marble of the Pantheon both convey the same message. Romans were powerful. Despite their differences, the architectural mastery displayed by Roman engineers is evident in both structures.
But this acknowledgement for mastery can't stop there. It's also the attention to features like the Velarium and the Colosseum, which provided shade and control light during events. In contrast, the oculus and the Pantheon allow light to pour into the structure, offering a completely different way of manipulating the atmosphere. It's as if the Romans had a unique understanding of how to shape architecture to enhance the experience of those who enter these spaces.
I'd also like to highlight their impressive engineering techniques, such as that constructing the Colosseum in separate sections for easier maintenance and repair, and then building the Pantheon by stacking materials based on their weight. These approaches showcase the Romans' advanced understanding of structural integrity and efficiency.
However, what fascinates me is how these two structures differed so greatly in purpose and how they are telling of the culture.
Yeah, the Romans were so brutal and oppressive in structures like the Colosseum, where violent events could last for days. Meanwhile, in contrast, the Pantheon stands as a beautiful and almost delicate testament of the reverence for the gods. It's fascinating how the Romans were able to blend such intense violence with such intricate and spiritual architectural expressions within the same city. It's almost as if the Colosseum and the Pantheon represent two sides of Roman society, its dominance and devotion.
Exactly. The Colosseum, with its brutal history, gladiatorial combat, and animal hunts, reflects Roman values of entertainment, power, and control. In contrast, the Pantheon, with its harmonious design and celestial focus, embodies the Roman spiritual connection to the divine. Both structures, though vastly different, reveal the complexities of Roman culture, from dominance to devotion.
Absolutely. I think we must mention how these were pretty much direct reflections of Romans' multifaceted and complex society.
It's this balance of contrasting elements, brutality, grace, and power, that makes these structures so fascinating. They not only stand as physical feats of engineering, but also as cultural symbols of the Romans' worldviews.
Well, that's all that we have for today's episode of Stones of Power. We hope you enjoyed diving into the monumental structures of the Colosseum and the Pantheon with us. Join us next time as we continue exploring the legacy of ancient Roman architecture and its lasting influence on modern society.
Thank you so much, and we look forward to having you with us on our next adventure throughout history. Until then, stay curious and keep questioning the past to better understand the present.
See you next time.